What if you've prayed, but nothing seemed to happen? What if you've opened the Bible, listened to sermons, tried to have faith, and still had questions you couldn't answer? Maybe you've even felt guilty for thinking this way. You may have wondered, what kind of Christian am I if I have doubts? If that's where you are right now, I want you to hear this clearly. It's okay to admit that you're not sure. You don't have to pretend with God. You don't have to force yourself to feel something you don't feel. And you don't have to be ashamed of having questions. Faith is not the absence of questions. Sometimes faith begins with being honest enough to ask them. The Bible itself is filled with people who questioned, struggled, doubted, and felt confused. David asked God why he seemed far away. Job questioned why he was suffering. Jeremiah questioned why life felt so unfair. And one of the most honest moments comes from a man who wanted to believe but was struggling. In Mark chapter 9, a father brings his suffering son to Jesus. When Jesus tells him that all things are possible for the one who believes, the man responds with words that are incredibly human. He says, "I believe, help my unbelief." Think about that. He didn't pretend to have perfect faith. He didn't say, "Jesus, I have no doubts whatsoever." He basically said, "I want to believe, but part of me is still struggling." And Jesus didn't turn him away. That matters. Because maybe that's where you are. Part of you wants to believe, part of you wants to know God, part of you hopes there is something greater than this life. But another part of you keeps asking, how do I know? That's a real question. And you don't need to be afraid of it. Sometimes people think that questioning God means rejecting God. It doesn't necessarily mean that. There is a difference between honestly searching for truth and refusing to consider it. If you're genuinely searching, keep searching. Read, think, ask questions. Pray, even if you're not sure anyone is listening. You can even pray something as simple as, "God, if you're really there, help me know you." That prayer doesn't need perfect words. God isn't impressed by fancy language. He wants honesty. And maybe you won't suddenly have some dramatic experience. Maybe there won't be a bright light or a voice from heaven. Sometimes the journey is much quieter than that. You may begin by noticing small things: a verse that stays in your mind, a conversation that makes you think, a moment of peace when you expected anxiety, a question that keeps returning, a desire to understand something you once ignored. Don't force these things into a meaning they may not have. Just pay attention and give yourself permission to explore. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is believing that you have to solve every question before you can take one step toward God. You don't. You can investigate Christianity while still having doubts. You can read the Gospels and still have questions. You can attend church and still be uncertain. You can talk to Christians who disagree with you. You can learn about the history of the Bible. You can examine the arguments for and against belief. God is not threatened by honest questions. If God is real, then truth will not be afraid of investigation. And if you're afraid that your doubts will somehow make God angry, remember this: you are not hiding your thoughts from Him. If God knows everything, then He already knows your doubts. He knows the questions you haven't said out loud. He knows the parts of you that are confused, so why pretend? Be honest with Him. Tell Him exactly where you are. Maybe you're angry, tell Him. Maybe you're skeptical, tell Him. Maybe you want to believe but can't. Tell Him. Maybe you've been hurt by religious people and now you're struggling to trust anything they say. Tell Him. You don't need to clean yourself up before coming to God. You come honestly, exactly as you are, and perhaps that's where your journey really begins. Not with certainty, but with honesty. There is also something important to remember. Your feelings are not always a perfect measure of reality. There may be days when you feel close to God. There may be days when you feel absolutely nothing. That doesn't automatically prove God is present or absent. Feelings change, your understanding changes, your circumstances change. So don't build your entire view of God on how you feel on one particular day. Keep searching, keep learning, keep asking, and don't let someone else's bad behavior decide whether God exists. People can represent Christianity badly, Christians can be hypocritical, churches can make mistakes, religious leaders can fail, but the failures of people don't automatically answer the question of whether God is real. Look deeper. Go back to the source. Read about Jesus for yourself. Don't only listen to what someone else says about him. Read his words, look at his actions. Ask yourself what kind of person he was, and then make your own judgment. You don't need to rush. Your spiritual journey is not a race. Maybe you've spent years believing without questioning. Maybe now you're questioning everything. That can be uncomfortable. But sometimes uncomfortable questions lead to stronger convictions. A faith that has never been examined can be fragile. But when you wrestle with difficult questions and can continue searching for truth, you may eventually find that your faith becomes more personal and more grounded. And if you're not there yet, that's okay too. You don't have to pretend that you are. If you're watching this and thinking, Matthew, I want to believe, but I just don't know, then hear this from me and from Grace Mind Journey. You are not disqualified from searching. You are not a failure because you have questions. And you are not required to fake certainty just to make other people comfortable. Take your time. Seek truth honestly. And if you are willing, keep one small door open. Maybe your prayer today is simply, God, I don't know if you're there, but if you are, I want to know the truth. That's enough for today. You don't need to have every answer tonight. You just need to be honest about where you are and willing to keep looking. Because sometimes the journey toward God doesn't begin with a powerful feeling. Sometimes it begins with one honest question. And maybe the fact that you're asking that question is not the end of your faith. Maybe it's the beginning of something deeper. So don't be afraid of your doubts. Bring them into the light, bring them to scripture, bring them to honest conversations, and most importantly, bring them to God. If He's real, He can handle your questions. And if you're truly seeking the truth, don't be afraid of where that search may lead. You don't have to know everything today. You don't have to pretend. Just keep seeking, keep asking, keep walking, and let the truth reveal itself one step at a time.